Hi everybody, Sam Mellinger here with the Kansas City Star, here for our weekly Tuesday at noon Facebook live chat. I appreciate everybody spending some time with me. Hopefully the next 15 or 20 minutes go by a little quicker with us. We can talk about sports and other important things. I wanted to start though with something that I hear a lot from people, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook, emails, voicemails, just in a restaurant around town, and that is the idea that the Royals have gotten away from what made them good. You know, their rise from, you know, industry punchline to a parade was marked by putting the ball in play, forget about home runs, put the ball in play, run fast, play great defense, sacrifice a little bit of the rotation in exchange for having a great bullpen. That was a success that went from, you know, 310 losses from 2004 to 2006 to, you know, American League pennant in 14 and then a World Series championship in 15. So why have the Royals gotten away from this? But I think that this is missing an important point, and I've said this a few times, whether it's in the minutes or a column, but I think I want to make this point very clear, very precise here, and that is the Royals have not gotten away from what helped them come from, you know, punchline to parade. They absolutely have not. The thing is, the rub is that I think people are often confusing what brought them that far. And it's not just put the ball in play, great bullpen, great defense. It's that they were swimming, they were fishing in lakes where nobody else was fishing. They were finding ways that, that baseball talent and characteristics and qualities were being undervalued around baseball, specifically speed, defense, and bullpen. The prices on starting pitching were going through the roof. The prices on power hitters going through the roof. So the Royals got away from that, went toward bullpen arms, which were you could find on the cheap, and there's a lot of them to be had because every failed starter is a potential good relief pitcher. And defense was being overlooked in a lot of cases in exchange for home runs. So the Royals were putting their, putting their money in a place where nobody else was. They got more value for their dollar, and that's how they were able to, a large part of how they were able to build, you know, an outfield basically with 3 center fielders, a bullpen basically with 3 closers, and that's a huge part of how they won so much. Now, they have gotten away a little bit from the speed and defense on the offense and from the bullpen on the pitching staff. But that follows this bigger trend, because now Chris Carter led the league in home runs last year, and he signed a 1-year, $3 million contract. Brandon Moss hit 28 home runs last year for the Cardinals, and he's in Kansas City now on a 2-year, $12 million contract. Jason Hamill went through the entire offseason after winning whatever it was, 15, 17 games for the world champs last year without, you know, an offer. The Cubs turned down, I think it was a 1-year, $12 million, 1-year, $11 million option on him, a good, solid starting pitcher. 10 years ago, that never would have happened. Starting pitching prices have kind of come down, bullpen prices have gone up, and the Royals have, you know, sort of zigged again where others have zagged. And that's how they came to be. That's the Wade Davis trade to bring in Jorge Soler, a power hitter. That's one way that they've shown that. Jason Hamill signing, you know, they've gone a little bit more towards starting pitching. They're sacrificing some defense and speed in the name of power. And that's sort of the philosophy behind this team. So it's not that they've gotten away from what, you know, made them good. They're actually sticking exactly with what made them good. I think people sometimes are just looking at the wrong things and not sort of the cause behind why the Royals pushed for so much defense and speed. Now, that's a whole different thing than saying this is going to work. That's a whole different thing than saying the Royals are going to win the World Series or even get in the playoffs in 2017. There's a lot. I know we're only a week into the season, obviously, but there's a lot more to be concerned about with this team than be excited about with this team so far. But that is an important point that I think some people are missing, because I hear a lot about, you know, why'd you let Davis and Holland go? Greg Holland's off to a really good start, by the way, with the Colorado Rockies, and go with all this power and starting pitching. But that's sort of their philosophy. If they're going to be limited by budget, limited by payroll, they've got to find some other ways to do it. So that's how they're doing it. The bigger, you know, kind of long-term concern, I think, for the Royals is that their farm system just isn't that good right now. They don't have a lot of guys, you know, like in that whole wave from 2009 or 10-ish to 2013-14, they had guys that were churning up every year ready to contribute to the big league team. They don't quite have that, especially if Matt Strom's going to take a step back. Raul Mondesi's really struggling at the plate right now. So that, kind of long term, that's the bigger concern. But anyway, important point, and I hope I'll keep saying this every so often, but I hope that maybe I'm making sense, and hopefully people can understand a little bit better where the Royals are coming from on some of those things. So anyway, let's move on, guys. We've got some questions here. Keep sending them too. I'm gonna keep refreshing. The people who submit questions on the Facebook, directly on the Kansas City Stars Facebook page, you guys will get priority, which I know is important. And then I've got some others here that I'll get to as well. All right. All right, Nick Panda. Sam, I've been reading all your coverage for a few years now and interested to hear what you have to say about the Royals this year. My question is, at what point do we have to stop calling you a floppy-haired asshat? Never, never. I'm here for you guys. Always will be. One other thing about the Royals to talk about. So they are hitting some more home runs this year. The offense, I think, right now has been, the biggest problem, especially yesterday with the home opener. But this is an offense, I think, that is going to get better as the season goes along. And I'm going to bring up Jorge Soler here, and I understand that his contributions to the 2017 Royals are exactly the same as yours and mine. Maybe even less, because I don't know, you may be Ned Yost watching this right now, or Mike Moustakas watching this right now, in which case Jorge Soler's contributions are much less. But Jorge Soler, I think Brandon Moss, Alex Gordon has always been a slow starter, but let's just stick with Soler and Moss, two keys to the Royals offense, two guys that if everything went the right way for the Royals, those two guys combined would get 1,000 plate appearances for them this year. Switching leagues is always a little bit difficult, and Jorge Soler in particular has always seemed to me, and people who know him well have kind of backed this up, that he's a guy, when he comes up, he is liable to try to justify being traded for Wade Davis with every swing. Try to hit, a 3-run home run when there's only one guy on base, like that kind of thing. And there may be kind of a prolonged adjustment period with Jorge Soler. I believe in his talent, and I do think that it's a good trade, particularly with 4 years of club control on Jorge Soler and only 1 year on Wade Davis, whose elbow kind of has to make you concerned. But I think that Jorge Soler, I don't know when he's going to come back. Hopefully it's soon, like in the next week or two. But he's going to be a guy that at the end of April's, I don't think going to be hitting very well. At the end of May, maybe a little bit better. But he's a guy that, if you look at his numbers, July, August, September, I think it's going to be a lot better. Once the weather heats up, I think he's going to heat up a little bit more. So if you're worried, freaking out about the offense, I think be a little bit patient. I do think that they're going to end up scoring some runs. The biggest problem, obviously, right now is the bullpen. And they were fine yesterday against the A's. And, if Kelly, look, like the conversation, I mentioned this in the minutes, which may or may not be up right now, but the conversation with the Royals right now is based on such a small sample size that this is true. They've lost 2 games in a row, right? On Sunday, they probably win the game if Kelvin Herrera doesn't hang his third best pitch, which is a slider, to a guy who could not hit his best 2 pitches. He hung it, it got banged, they go into extra innings, and they lose the game there. If Kelvin Herrera sticks with his fastball there, he probably puts the game away, the Royals win. On Monday, the Royals probably win. That wind was howling from left to right, basically blowing straight out to right center field. Chris Davis hit a ball that on 81 home games at Kauffman Stadium this year for the Royals, Chris Davis hit a ball that's going to be a home run on maybe 2 or 3 of those days. He got it up in the jet stream, and the wind pushed it out over the right field wall. That's the only reason that ball got over the fence. That same wind, knocked down a ball that Sal hit way up in the air that on 81 home games might be a home run 45, 50, 55 times, but it got knocked down by that wind. It was caught at the fence. That was in some ways the difference in the game. So I understand we're talking about small margins here, and the conversation with the Royals would be so much different if they had won those 2 games. Now they're 4-2, winning 4 in a row. I think people are feeling a lot better. But there are still a lot of things to be concerned about with this team, particularly with the bullpen. All right, Andrew Bear, and let me make sure we don't have any more Facebook questions. But Andrew Bear talks about a cornerback being a need. Cornerback needs to be a priority for the Chiefs in the draft. Sort of. I think you guys probably know where I stand on what the Chiefs should do in the draft. I really believe this is the year for so many reasons. They've got extra picks. Alex Smith is going to cost or can save $17 million on the salary cap if they cut him next year. They could also redo the contract, obviously. But it's a group of 4 prospects at the top: Deshaun Kaiser, Deshaun Watson, Mitch Trubisky, and Pat Mahomes, sorry. That probably all 4 of those guys need a year. The Chiefs can give them a year. They can get something out of a quarterback at a much cheaper price. So to me, that needs to be their priority. Cornerback, Andrew, I think is probably a priority every year. I think you just always need to defend the pass and always look for cornerbacks. So yes, if you take a cornerback high in the draft, because usually that's where you have to get those guys, I don't think you're ever sort of going the wrong way. But I do think that this year's a little bit different. I really hope that they get a quarterback, even if it means having to trade up a little bit. All right, Sean Gentry asks on the Facebook page, would you have pinch hit for Moss in the 9th yesterday? Another thing that I talked about in the minutes, which again may or may not be posted by now, watching live from the press box, I was not like flabbergasted, but I was really, really surprised. I thought Ned was making a mistake. Not pinch hitting Chesler Cuthbert against Sean Doolittle in the 9th inning there with 2 outs. And if I remember right, 2 on in that situation. And Doolittle, a nasty lefty, had really overwhelmed Mike Moustakas and Eric Hosmer, left-handed hitters obviously, struck them both out. Now up comes Brandon Moss, another lefty. And I was surprised and then, really sure that Ned Yost was making a mistake letting Brandon Moss hit in that situation. As it turns out, Doolittle overpowered Moss, got the out, finished the game. So in a results-based business, maybe Ned Yost did make the mistake. That being said, when we went downstairs for the regular, post-game press conference, Ned made a point that I hadn't thought about, which was, again, that wind that I was talking about earlier. It really was howling out to right field. And Ned liked, according to them, they don't think that Moss's power goes away against lefties. And if he was able to get the ball up in the air into that jet stream, he could have got something to carry a little bit and maybe over the fence, and then the Royals have a walk-off win. I hadn't thought about that. It's an interesting point. And it's enough for me to, back off the statement that Ned made a mistake. I think that's a thoughtful answer. He had a good reason for it. Now, to me, I still would have pinch hit. Moss last year, I looked this up after the game. Last year, Moss hit 25 of his 28 home runs against right-handed pitching. He slugged 150 points higher against righties than lefties. Chesler Cuthbert hits lefties much better than he does righties. I think that going all in for the home run, if it works, that's great. But I think the higher percentage play is just getting the ball in play, a base hit, because especially with Terrence Gore there at first, and I don't know why Terrence Gore didn't steal. I know he went and there was a foul ball, but anyway, Terrence Gore needs to be on second base after the first pitch when he's a pinch runner. But if Chesler Cuthbert can just get the ball in play with Terrence Gore at first base, you've got a chance to tie the game there. So I still think it was a mistake, but I thought it was a thoughtful answer from Ned at least, and something that I wouldn't have thought of right there in the middle of it. Okay, Mason Herman. How long of a leash do you think Mondesi has? The Royals are an organization that sort of believes in stability in the lineup. And, Ned has talked about that over and over again. His old line is, one thing he learned from Bobby Cox is that, once you get to the point where you want to make a change in the lineup or batting order, that's fine, then wait a week. And after that next week, if you still feel like you need to make that change, then make that change. So they are an organization that I think is slower than most to make changes like this. The thing with Mondesi, he is still, and look, like I think Mondesi should be in the minor leagues. I think he'd be developing better there. Maybe build some confidence. And Whit Merrifield, at the very least, can be a guy who doesn't hurt you at second base. If Christian Colon isn't playing everyday second base for you, I'm not sure what value he really has on the roster. Chesler Cuthbert is interesting. He's below average, I think, still defensively, but better than I expected. And the best hitter of the bunch. You've got, my point is, you've got other options that you can go to if and when you decide to go a different way on Mondesi. But I'm not really answering your question there. I realize that the answer is it depends on how much he struggles. Look, the other day on Sunday, he helped them win. They lost the game, but if they won that game, Mondesi would have been a small part why. He turned a really nice double play. Nobody else in the organization could have turned that double play. Forgot who the Houston runner was on first base, but he made that tag and then the throw to first to get 2 outs there. Chesler Cuthbert, when he came in the game, didn't turn a double play that Mondesi probably turns. Mondesi also had a nice little RBI sack bunt that drove in a run. So, he did some things that night, that afternoon. My point is to help them win a game. So even when he's struggling, swinging the bat, he can still find other ways to help them. And my guess is that as long as he's able to do those kinds of things, the Royals are going to try to have some patience with him until he's hitting, like 130 in June. And then at some point you need to make a change. So, all right, we got time for, I think, a couple more. Mark Davidson has an interesting question. With the recent hot dog derby controversy, how does one get entered in the race? I have a 12-year-old daughter who has wanted to enter and can fly. You've come to the right place, Mark. You are talking to an undefeated champion of the hot dog derby. So I have some pointers for you here. This was, gosh, it's been a while now, 8-9 years. I was in the hot dog race. Team Relish, of course, and I'm going to tell you something. Some people might say this is cheating. I say it's well within the rules. They tell you very clearly before the race, if your shoes fall off, no problem, keep racing. You can't kick your shoes off. You can't purposely take your shoes off, but if they come off, no problem. So don't tie your shoes very tight. Let those babies fall off, and then you're running barefoot. Which is much better. Those shoes are floppy and awkward, and as you saw yesterday when, Relish and Mustard both tripped, they fell, they can be hard to run in. If you are running without those shoes on, you have an almost unfair advantage in that race. So I'm telling you, whatever you do, don't tie those shoes too tight. Let them fall off, and you will be successful. I think, let's see here. Let me see if we got one more. Yeah, I think that's about all we have time for today. So anyway, thanks a lot for everybody stopping by. I really appreciate your time. The questions are good. Keep those coming next week, and I'll see you again at noon next Tuesday. Bye-bye.